My name is Reverend Jessie, and it's my honor and my privilege and my great joy to be with you here in this beautiful sanctuary of Unity of Blairsville, and to be with you in community in a little different form of community than we've known in the past, but so grateful to have these platforms that we can still get together uh, technically anyways. So let's just take a minute to just breathe in the joy of coming together in community. The joy of coming together to walk with these teachings that we love, that change our lives, and to go deeper with them together. So we just dedicate this morning to a deeper walk with trusting the process of change. Allowing that God of our understanding to grow even bigger and wider and deeper in our consciousness. And to hold the intention that each of us will be touched by an idea, by a divine idea that will help us go deeper and wider in that walk as we share this time together. So we just say, thank you, God, for Unity of Blairsville, for unity, for these teachings, and for each and every one of us that comes together and then brings these teachings alive to change our world. So for it all, we say thank you. And so it is. Amen and amen. So again, I say welcome. And I'll light our Unity Christ candle, which in Unity, if you're fairly new to Unity, the idea of the Christ is that divine idea in each one of us, that repeatable pattern of the Christ that Jesus brought alive fully. And we have that invitation to do that as well with all of our relationships, with all of our experiences. Every moment of the day, we have the opportunity to go deeper with how can I live this love more fully? So let's light the candle that's the outer symbol of that flame that burns so brightly in each and every one of us. And then I'll read the daily word. It's a good one. They're all good, but for August 2nd, Sunday, 2020, it's compassion. I am kind and compassionate. So let that affirmation just breathe you. Because boy, isn't that one we have to remember during this time. First of all, to be kind to ourselves, because and compassionate with ourselves in this human divine walk. And then as we take that deeper within ourselves, we can hold that more fully through all of the relationships, through all the people that we meet in our day. So seeking to grow in compassion, I look to the example of Jesus. Gospel stories give many examples of Jesus showing compassion by demonstrating keen awareness of the needs and feelings of friends and strangers alike. I remember learning that Jesus did not turn away from social outcasts. He healed them and shared meals with them. His compassion fed a multitude and restored wine to a wedding reception. Upon learning that his dear friend had died, Jesus wept. Even when his disciples deserted him as he was crucified, Jesus asked God to forgive them. As I desire to grow in compassion, I know that my kind words and even simply my loving presence provide comfort. I listen deeply with my heart as well as with my ears. And from Philippians chapter 2, verse 4, let each of you look not to your own interests, but to the interests of others. And again, I am kind and compassionate. And I love that last little paragraph that said, as I desire to grow in this compassion, breathe this in. Know how important each and every one of us are every day of our lives. But during this walk with so much change happening, I think it becomes even more important to really remember who we are and the power that we walk as that love of all creation that created this universe, that created us. And now we have the opportunity to bring it out into the world and create with how we show up. I know that my kind words and even simply my loving presence provide comfort. Now breathe that in for yourself. That's how important each and every one of us is. And it doesn't always seem like I'm doing very much, but that presence that we bring touches in ways that I think perhaps we don't even understand. So that was a good daily word, don't you think? So I listened to Reverend Jim Rosemergy's message last Sunday, and I wanted to bring alive a few of those ideas too, because I've been using them all week. And sometimes I just need to go deeper with ideas, not always having something new to. And his how-to from Paul, I've been using it all week. It's to rejoice always in all things. And the is about remembering to do that. So, joy is the greatest expression of knowing God. And so how can I rejoice in this walk every single day, more and more remembering God? And then to pray unceasingly. So to take those little prayer breaks and remembering to walk a little bit slower, a little more mindfully, and send out that energy of God whenever we have a little pause break in our days. And then to give gratitude in all things. And I've been practicing that a lot. How about you? There's a lot of things out there to be grateful for. And then when there are things that we see that I don't know, I want to resist, how can I find something here to be grateful in the middle of this also? And then I'm going to add another little piece to Reverend Jim's 3 things that I've been walking with. I'm going to add the word wonder. Instead of trying to figure out how we're walking through this time of change, let's just wonder. Let's just take time to wonder every morning. I wonder how God's going to show up today. I wonder how God's going to work through this. I wonder, I have no way, I can't figure this out, but we don't have to figure it out. We just have to pray and listen and give gratitude and rejoice and wonder. How's God going to show up? How is this a place to grow that God of my understanding into how big is my God? Maybe I just need to grow my God, my consciousness into something bigger that will allow me to see more during this time of the good. So we're going to talk about today this trusting the process of change. I started this 4-week series with you all the last time I was with you, and we got cut off in the middle, but part of it was there. And the one thing I want to really remind you of was it's not the event itself that causes all the upset. This is just something that's just happening. It's the meaning we put to it. So if there's something in your world that's upsetting, how can we change the meaning behind it? How can we see it through a different lens? How can we remember that God is working in and through this too? How do we do that? So it's so important to not let our thoughts go down that slippery slope of ain't it awful, ain't it awful. And I know one thing I said last week was the new growth in trees are up there on the little thin branches. So we're living on those little skinny branches of life right now. And it may not feel as stable, but God is just as present because God is in the growth. God is all about change. If we stayed the same, there's no place for that new creation of God to flow, is there? So it's growing deeper in how we can trust the process of change and not resist the process. I know when it's something that I'm having to let go of that I don't want to let go of, I'll resist. And I've thought about it a lot this week, and I thought, why do I resist? And it goes back to that trusting the process of change. Do I really trust that there's greater good here that can come from this? Do I really trust that God of my understanding to bring something better if this was really wonderful? It's growing that faith and trust muscle, isn't it? So one of the scriptures for today is from Ecclesiastes, and I'm sure you're all familiar with, for everything there is a season for everything under heaven. And so when we bring our consciousness, our God consciousness into that alignment, we are in heaven, aren't we? And then we can walk through everything that's happening here and know that for everything there is a season and for everything a purpose under heaven. And everything in this world is impermanent. There's nothing here that's going to remain the same except our consciousness. That God consciousness is always flowing. That doesn't end. But everything else does. And today we're going to start talking about this process of change by talking about endings. And I said that to somebody this week, and they said, "Ooh, that's scary." And I guess when you think about just endings, it can be. But, we honor beginnings so much, don't we? But something has to end for something new to begin. There are no new beginnings unless something ends first. So I had a couple reminders this morning, which really spoke to me about this. I was sitting out on my deck having a cup of tea. And when I went out to sit, I have a table out there with an umbrella. And when I went out to sit, there was this huge spider web right there in the middle of the table under the umbrella. Now, I had had dinner out there last night. This spider web was not there last night. And so I thought of the spider in Native American wisdom. It's what are you weaving with your life? What kind of life are you weaving with your thoughts? And so I was sitting, and the spider was sitting right in the big spider, right in the middle of the web. And there were a few little tears in the web, and I thought, oh, that's kind of like my life. Some places that have felt kind of like that. And I was just enjoying it. And then all of a sudden, the spider moves out to one quadrant of the web and pulls it in, and it goes away. And then the spider pulled to the other quadrant of the web and pulled the spider web up until there was no more web. I've never seen that before. I didn't know that happened. But here was this beautiful web that wasn't there last night. And when I went out, I enjoyed it in the now moment. And then it was gone. And that's how endings can be too, isn't it? So we best enjoy everything that we're enjoying right in the moment and look for the good in it, even if it's hard to find sometimes, because this life is so precious. So precious. And I don't want to waste a moment of it. And then when I was driving up here on that twisty, turny road, having to pay really good attention from Demarest up here to Blairsville, there was a crow sitting in the middle of the road with something in it that it was eating. And it just stood there. It looked at me. I had to kind of stop for a minute. And I didn't have time to look up crow, but I'm pretty sure crow means death. So something ending. So today we've come together to talk about endings and to bring honor to endings, and to not think it's something bad, but it's part of the process of change. And we have to honor that whole process of change. So whether it's the greater world as we've known it, and it's looking so different than I ever thought it would, or whether it's something personal in your life that's either ended or may end, this is part of the process of change. I want to read a quote from in here. Let's see, page 5. I may have read this last week, but I don't remember if my camera had gone dead by the time I read it. We talk also in Unity about divine order. And so that's that order of the universe that we can trust it and know it and believe it so easily when we look at the constellations in the heavens and in nature, and you know how the new spring growth comes and then it's the full beauty and then it falls away and then it dies and goes into that place. We trust that kind of change so much and that kind of order. But y'all, order is through everything in our lives as well. So listen to this quote. This is the book that I'm using, Finding Yourself in Transition by Robert Brummett. And if you don't have it, you might want to get it. It's a fabulous book about transition that I've used many times, but I think since we're in such a big worldwide one right now, I'm really sinking in with it more. It's meaning more to me this time. So if it might be a good companion for you to walk with if you feel like getting it. But here's one of the quotes from Robert. We're talking about endings. The ultimate cause for this ending is always the one presence and one power we call God, seeking to express through us more perfectly. It is essential that we listen to and trust this power at work in our lives, in whatever form God is expressing, even if it feels painful or confusing at the time. For we rarely understand the reason for the changes in our lives when we are in the midst of our emotional reaction to them. God is not only walking with us, God orchestrated this in the divine plan, the divine order somehow, and good is going to come from this. Good is already on the way. We just have to keep aligning ourselves, remembering, rejoicing, giving thanks, going into prayer, and wondering instead of getting upset. Gosh, I wonder how God's going to show up here. Gosh, I wonder how God's going to use this. So for this trust walk, a favorite scripture of mine that I'm pretty sure I've used before with you all because I use it a lot. It's one of the first ones I ever really sat with, but it fits with this. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not in your own understanding. Acknowledge him in all thy ways, and he will make straight your path. Now, I don't believe there's a he up there doing that, but I do believe this presence that underlies and is in and through everything is orchestrating this and holding the best possible outcome that comes as we align ourselves. It doesn't mean that it's a foregone conclusion. We have to keep being that creative process to bring it about. So we just have to trust. And there's another little story that I think I've probably shared with you all at least once before also. So when we're family, we have the privilege to tell stories again that are favorites. And we just nod and smile and go, yes, if you've heard it before. But once upon a time, there was a little caterpillar walking across this rug. And this little caterpillar was confused so much of the time. There were all these different colors and all these different shapes, and it didn't understand what was happening. And then one day, this caterpillar that had crawled down here on the ground transformed into this beautiful butterfly and flew up over this oriental carpet that he'd been crawling across and saw the beauty in the design that was there all along. He just couldn't understand it in the moment. So as we remember to bring our consciousness up into the heavens and remember these truth teachings, it helps us walk across our daily planet when perhaps we're confused and not understanding why on earth this change has to be this way. And yet it's happening. So it's that opportunity or danger if we go down the slippery slope, but the opportunity to hold to God, to cling to God as if our very life force depended on it, to cling to these teachings, to grow them deeper when we didn't think we possibly could. So, Unity of Blairsville's affirmations this month. They're actually, I asked Marianne if we could use the ones from last month again. Again, it's me wanting to go deeper when something really resonates with me. So I'm hoping they really resonate with you, because these affirmations are that way to hold that consciousness. And I know I put them on a little card. You might want to get a little card or several cards and keep them in your car and put one in your kitchen or someplace to help you remember when you might get pulled off, or maybe next to the television where you watch the news. That might be a real good place to put one of these little cards. And so the first affirmation for working with our consciousness is, I stand boldly in knowing all is well. Boy, I have to wonder how that's working, don't you? I stand boldly right here at the edge of all that I know and wonder, how is this going to be? But I'm willing to hold boldly in knowing that all is well. I hope you'll hold that with me. And then the second one is, I am guided and directed to experience my highest and greatest yet to be. Doesn't that speak to that trust walk we were talking about earlier? If we're having to let go of something that has been so important and precious to us, if something seems to be dying out in the world that we don't understand, as we remember to pray unceasingly and to wonder how God's going to show up, I am guided and directed to experience my highest and greatest good yet. Are you willing to be willing to even hold that with me? Willing to be willing, our highest and greatest good yet to be. And then this is my own personal one that I stick in every month. I know nothing and everything is possible. When I see here, when I'm that little caterpillar thinking, I know nothing, and God's view, and everything is possible. So we just hold that vision of what we want, of peace on earth, of knowing that that greater good is already on the way. And then we just keep walking and do what presents itself each and every day for us to be that creative force, that creative power of love in our world. And so today we're going to begin talking about the fourth stage, the three stages, of this creative process. And the first one is endings. And then next week we'll move to the second stage, which is the void. And then when I'm with you again in September, we'll finally get to those new beginnings. But we have to walk through this stuff mindfully, or when we get to that place where we want there to be that new beginning, we'll still be dragging along the stuff that we haven't let go of. So I don't know about you, but I don't want to drag it along. Do you? I don't want to drag any of my past upsets. I don't want to drag any of my places of unforgiveness. I don't want to drag the places where I don't trust God of my understanding that something really wonderful can show up. I want to sink into that open hearted yes, and it has to begin here, you all, with the endings. Take a deep breath. I know when I haven't wanted the ending that's showing up to happen, it's hard to surrender into that, but that's where we are. We're surrendering into that ending. And you know, one of the prayers that came to me as I've been sitting with this week is the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, the courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I'm going to change one little word in that prayer, which really speaks to me of being in this presence and knowing this God of our understanding is mightily at work. Instead of asking God, with God grant me, change it to grants. God grants me. God grants me. Oh no, I'm going to forget. God grants me the acceptance. Oh, my brain. I guess I need to sink into that presence a little bit more. Well, it's about acceptance of what we're seeing out here and letting go of the places that we can't touch, we can't change. And then knowing the difference between what's ours to do, which is work with our thoughts, and knowing that we can't change necessarily any of those outer circumstances, but we can see them differently and then live them differently. It's just gone. I say it every day. Oh, you all, we have to laugh during this time, don't we? I have to laugh at myself all the time. And part of that, for me, is that aging process that I have to accept. Sometimes I lose the words that I know as well as my name. So here we are in our ending. And I want to read to you again a quote from Robert's book. It's about honoring the ending, but not getting stuck there. Not getting stuck there with the feelings that it brings up. Because for me, these endings often have a lot of feelings attached to them. And the more I can feel them, the more I can move through them. So as things are ending for me, I've watched myself have tears quite a bit. And sometimes I've really let myself let them flow. I used to call them holy water because it's a letting go, isn't it? It's a release. And when we hold them on, we're clinging energetically somehow. And so the tears are a letting go just in themselves because things are changing so rapidly. Anytime we see an ending as an absolute finality rather than the beginning of a transition process, we may be taking it too seriously. So can we wonder how the greater good is showing up? Can we feel those feelings and then really work with these ideas of growing our consciousness through it? So there are 4 aspects of this letting go process. And the first one is disengagement. We'll often notice it when something out here in the outer is ending. Something that we've been connected with, perhaps in the form that it takes right now, very intimately. But underneath that form, for me, as I've thought about it, is that living love that it represented, isn't it? And that living love is always there for us. We just have to be willing to let go of the form that we've loved and trust that that living love will bring new form into our lives, new greater good. We have to disengage from the form and grieve it as much as we need to grieve it so that we don't carry the, oh, I wish it were still there. And I know sometimes for me, I've had to grieve something a really long time. I don't want to have to do that so much this time. I'm hoping that I've grieved enough along the way that I don't have quite as much baggage in this ending as I've had in others. Because there have been times where I've grieved an ending for like 10 years. And it needed to happen because it kept coming up. And my thoughts were maybe it was allowing me to grieve other things that I hadn't grieved when I was younger or smaller and didn't know to do this because I didn't know to feel so deeply. And we've come here to live heaven on earth in these bodies, in these very human bodies. And these bodies, I think our feelings are what bring us alive in these bodies. And so we have to let those feelings flow. And we don't get stuck there, but I know I need to really let them flow and then hold the truth teachings that we know. Then go back to the place and say, I stand boldly. I stand boldly right here in knowing all is well, even in the midst of these tears. Even in the midst of these tears. And I'll tell you an example of that. I was leaving my church up in Maine, and a real tragedy had happened on the human level of a little boy dying. And when the memorial service was taking place, the mom with some of her women friends got up on the platform with tears streaming down their faces and danced. And I think that's kind of an image I want to hold. How can I dance through this, allowing myself to feel everything that has meant so much to me in this disengagement where I'm letting it go, and yet still know that that love is right there wanting new good, new God, new life to show up. And so I hold that. I share that with you all. This disengagement is not comfortable. Again, we're up on those skinny branches of life, aren't we? It's not comfortable with the wind blowing and the new flowing and you not knowing how it's going to work. So we just cling to that new growth, that new God wanting to come through. So after disengagement, the next aspect for this letting go process is disidentification. And that's how have we identified ourselves in our lives? Or how have we identified a relationship? How have we identified an organization? How have we identified something that is changing for us? And when we look at it personally, again, I've really sat with it this week. I've gone underneath all the many roles and the things that I've claimed for myself. I think we can claim that we're either a son or a daughter. We can claim maybe husband and wife. I've claimed teacher. I've claimed minister. Whatever it is that has given us our identity in the outer world, underneath that is the truth of our nature, isn't it? That natural, authentic expression of that living Christ presence that we have brought to each of these forms that we've lived our life that have been so important to us. But perhaps the change right now is calling for us to have a deeper identity of who we are. And again, it takes that deep trust. I remember when I left my church in Maine. I'd identified so closely with that community up there. And I grieved that. And yet I have found wonderful Unity communities since I've left there, both in Florida and now here in Georgia. So there's always new good coming. I want to read to you again a quote. When I left Florida, I haven't let go of the role Gammy, but I had to let go of the role of being there with her. And it's different. She's growing up. When I moved to, when I left Maine and went to Florida to be with my granddaughter and son, um, she was one of the bright stars that I went down there for. And I got to watch her grow from 2.5 to now she's going into 5th grade. I just can't believe it. So I have to let go of that cherished identity I carried of her as well, because I loved that little girl that liked to play dolls, and get down on the floor and do silly things with me. And now she's that preteen that's way into all the technology and I have to work a little harder at finding ways to do it, and yet I so celebrate the young woman she's growing into. So it's all of us celebrating these changes within us and knowing that it's bringing us to something new. So here's what Robert says. Yet when we are willing to let go of this cherished identity and to face our fear of the unknown, our fear of annihilation, and see beyond it, we enter into the experience of becoming who we really are. And who we really are ready is more than we can ever imagine. And letting go of who we imagine ourselves to be, letting go of our thinking and clinging and feeling, our attempt to control the world, we come upon our natural being, which has been waiting patiently all these years for us to come home. So the invitation again this week, as you walk and in your meditation and prayer time, to think about how is your self-identity changing during this time? And how can you get underneath it more to just hold that knowing of God is right here. God is orchestrating this. God is my very life force. God is my breath. How can I know this more and bring this to whatever shows up for me so that I can live into that truth of that highest form of the identity of the Christ of our being, that divine possibility of always wanting to be more. And for me, it usually takes shaking up how I'm walking in the comfortable outer for me to be willing to go deeper. Otherwise, I just sort of rest and relax, and that's good too. There's a balance between the two, isn't it? There's a paradox of wanting those comfort zone places and just being able to enjoy, and then opening into the new and go, okay, how can I enjoy right here when I know something new is being pulled forth? And another aspect of this ending is disenchantment. And this sometimes can be the precursor to any change happening. We get disenchanted with something that has meant the world to us before. And when those feelings start to come up and they don't let go and they keep nudging us, perhaps, that this has been such a wonderful ride, but there's something that needs to come more. And I've watched that with myself this week. That's when that's happened with me before in relationships. Think back to a relationship that you don't have anymore, but that once you were so excited to have. Maybe a friendship. And then you had it for a while, and then perhaps something changed. Some friendships go forever in our lives, don't they? They're like that long thread in a tapestry that goes through the whole tapestry. And some are short and very bright, but then end. And sometimes that ending begins with a disenchantment of this just isn't working for me anymore. We change. Maybe that other person doesn't change quite the way we do. And we go in different directions. But again, in this ending process, and I've been doing this week, think about all those people, or some of those people that have been so important in our lives and aren't here anymore. And just take a moment to honor what they brought to this living tapestry. The disenchantment may have been part of what took them out of our life. That may not have been what took them out, but that's a possibility. But they're not here anymore, but that doesn't mean we can't still honor what they brought to our lives. I'm really into that honoring. And again, I ask my question with each of these disses that I've been looking at this week. How can I take a deeper trust walk in God as this disenchantment may be happening? How can I grow a bigger consciousness of God as this disenchantment is happening, and absolutely trust for everything there is a season, and there's a new season coming in all of our lives, every moment, every breath that we take, every day. And sometimes it looks a lot bigger. But Course in Miracles says there's no difficulty in order of miracles. There's no difficulty. We can change our consciousness and trust our thinking in something really big happening in our lives, and know that God is mightily at work right there. And then the last D, the last aspect of this ending that Robert speaks about, is disorientation. You know, it's that place where we don't quite know where we are anymore. It's that little caterpillar not understanding, being confused. We don't necessarily have the roadmap anymore. How many of you don't like to be without a roadmap or GPS? I want that roadmap. And our roadmap has to be going in and trusting that we'll be given the next step. I want to see how it's going to be 10 steps down the road. And at least my journey is always one step at a time. So can I take this step and trust that that new roadmap is on the way, is showing up one step at a time? That roadmap is made by walking, perhaps, right? So it sometimes changes. You know, I know we plan and God laughs. You all heard that, I know, I'm sure. And sometimes these endings scramble the way we had planned for the rest of our life to go, don't they? And so there's that disorientation of how is this going to work? And so all these D's, these disorientation, this disenchantment, this disidentification, and this disengagement all play into this ending. But if we sit with them and work with them, they help us with that place of acceptance. Accept the things you cannot change. Courage to change the things we can. And wisdom to know the difference. So, as these endings may be happening in our world, I just got a picture of John Lewis's memorial service. Did some of you watch that? Did you watch the service down here in Georgia? And one of the things that was said was that John wouldn't be upset at this ending because he knows that the young people will carry forth the torch that his life stood for. So the love that we stand for will be carried forth, won't it? In different forms. We have to trust that. We just have to trust. So let's go in for a time of meditation and work with some of these ideas. And As we go into meditation, I want to read something again from Robert's book. I think I read it already, but I'm going to read it again. This is not an absolute ending. It's just ending of form in this way. And what is not lost is the possibility of a new beginning. Let's let that breathe us as we begin to sink into this time of meditation. And to just absolutely gain that little bit of acceptance that endings are just part of the process of change. They're the beginning part of this process of transformation, this process of new good wanting to come forth. And there's a song, the grace chant, it's from a prayer. And to have this greater trust walk in this time of so much uncertainty really speaks to this for me. Into thy hands I commit my spirit. Into thy hands I commit my spirit. Thy will is my will. Heal me at depth, so that I may glorify God. Reveal that which needs to be revealed. Heal that which needs to be healed, so that I may glorify God, so that I may be that living presence of God, seeing my world through God eyes, through eyes of possibility, through eyes of wondering how God's going to show up here, through eyes of trusting in a deeper way than I've ever trusted before that God is here. So I invite you to just allow this time of whatever in your world appears to be ending, to ask what it's calling forth from you in consciousness. How is this taking me to a deeper walk into the Christ in my being? And to trust as we spend time in prayer and quiet and reflection, those answers are already on the way. We just have to catch them. Pray unceasingly. And if we feel a little bit confused, to just allow that to be part of the process, but to cling to those skinny branches of new life, trusting and knowing we are held in our very breath by that God of all creation that created the sun, the moon, the stars, the earth, the creepy crawlies that created us. As we cling to that consciousness, we create our world from that place as well. Heaven on earth. So let's rest for a moment or two in the silence of our being. Just giving space, giving pause to allow that new creation to begin to come into our mind, heart, being, in the silence of our being. And then begin to allow your consciousness to come back from the world of pure consciousness to the world of manifested consciousness. And wherever you are, look around and see the beauty of what your consciousness has created for you already. How can we not trust there's not more wonderment? So this poem is called Let It Go. Let go of the ways you thought your life would unfold. Darn. Let go of that resistance. Let go of the way you thought your life would unfold. The holding of plans or even dreams or expectations. We put out intentions, but we don't cling to them. We surrender them. Let it all go. Save your strength to swim with the tide. The choice to fight what is here before you right now will only result in struggle, fear, and desperate attempts to flee from the very energy that you long for. Let go. Take a deep breath of letting go, of willing or even willing to be willing. Let go. Trust. Let it all go and flow with the grace that washes through your days, whether you receive it gently or with all your quills raised to defend against invaders. Take this on faith. The mind may never find the explanations that it seeks, but we will move forward nonetheless. Let go, and the wave's crest will carry you to unknown shores. Now listen, if you believe this, to those unknown shores beyond your wildest dreams and destinations. Are you willing to trust that as a possibility? Will you join me of willing to be willing to trust that? Let it all go and find the place of rest and peace and certain transformation. So, that's the place of endings. Not to get stuck here, but truly to honor and feel and maybe journal and wonder what it's opening you up for. And rejoice in every moment of how it's been. And to pray for those deeper understandings. And always to give thanks. And lately I've not been doing just like a gratitude list. I've been trying to find a couple things in my day that I'm really profoundly grateful for and sink into them, into this body so that they can flow and feel and become the vibration in my body so that I can become that walking gratitude even through this time of endings. So, my hope and prayers this time together has nourished all of us that have joined. And if it has, I know on Unity of Blairsville's webpage and the newsletter, there's a way to give back because we want to keep that flow of abundance always flowing, don't we, in our lives? And as we receive, we give. As we give, we receive more. And so if this has served you today, I invite you to give a love offering, a tithe, a donation to Unity of Blairsville. Their outer doors may be closed here right now, keeping us all safe, but the living love that this community represents extends way beyond this building. So I just invite you to think about supporting this divine idea in God mind of Unity of Blairsville with your love offering, your tithe, your gift. So again, thank you so much, everyone that joined. It wouldn't have been the same without you. Where two or more are gathered in my name, there is that living Christ presence, and it just grows exponentially as we come together, even in this form of community. Thank you, God, for technology. So may you all have a beautiful rest of your day and week, and I look forward to joining with you next Sunday, where our topic will be the void. So blessed be you all.